Welcome to AutoDelightyt, a channel for car enthusiasts, and today we're reviewing this 2015 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution X. This is the Lancer Evolution X from Mitsubishi Motors, the last generation of Evos to ever be produced. The Evos were known for their extraordinary all-wheel drive system and robust inline-4 turbo. They were rally cars for the street, and not many could compete with them except their nemesis, the Subaru Impreza WRX and Ford Focus RS. The Evos are based on their very tame counterpart, the Lancer, but it is no boring econobox. Before we get into the review, let's go over some of the trims that were available for this generation Evo 10. You had the GSR trim, the SE trim, which only came out for I think 1 year, the MR trim, and then the final edition trim. The main difference between the GSR and the MR was that the GSR came with a 5-speed manual transmission and the MR came with a 6-speed dual clutch transmission. So it was automatic in a sense, like similar to the GTRs. The other differences between the MR and GSR was the MR came with the I-box springs and Bilstein shocks, as well as a more luxurious interior. It did come with a sunroof with a steel roof. It did have the leather seats, leather and suede seats, I believe, while the GSR didn't get those features. The GSR was sort of the base model, but mostly sold because everyone wanted the 5-speed manual versus the 6-speed automatic. In late 2010 to 2011, Mitsubishi came out with the special edition, the SE edition, which only brought 340 of those units to the US, or North America, one of the two. Regardless, it was a GSR and an MR, which had a baby, pretty much. There was a GSR exterior, except for it had the MR Touring lip spoiler, as well as the MR diffuser. Interior-wise, it had the MR luxury leather seats and heated seats, but it also had the 6-speed dual clutch transmission as well. Again, if you were lucky enough to get one of those 340 units, you probably have a key fob that tells you which number car you have, as well as you got an acknowledgement letter from one of the executives saying, yeah, you bought a special edition. The last trim to come to North America was the final edition, which, what it sounds like, was the final Lancer Evolutions that were being made. The final edition had a power output of 303 horsepower and 301 pound-feet of torque, in comparison to the 290 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque that the GSR and MR models had. I believe it was 291, somewhere around there. Anyways, the final edition, there was only 1,600 units. I don't know if that's 1,600 units total or just in North America. And the main differences was you got a red stitched black interior, as well as an aluminum roof. Prior to that, you had steel roofs on all of the Lancer Evolutions. The aluminum roof was painted black, and you got a final edition badge as well. Other cool trims I would actually want to note are from the United Kingdom. They've done this in previous generations of Lancer Evolutions, but they came out with their FQ series, which was up power pretty much. It was tuned by Mitsubishi UK to increase their horsepower. They came out with the FQ300, which was the first to hit 300 horsepower, FQ330, which hit 330 horsepower, FQ360, which was again 360 horsepower. Then they came out with the FQ400. Of course, you can tell they hit 400 horsepower. And then the last was the FQ440, which hit 440 horsepower. And the cool thing about that was you can get that from the dealership. It wasn't that you had to buy a GSR and get it done by a tuning shop. That was actually sold in dealerships. And for the FQ440, you only had 40 units ever produced. So if you're one of the lucky ones in the UK that have that, touche. The Lancer Evo 10 is powered by the 4B11 power plant, which is an inline-4 turbocharged engine. Previous generations of the Evolution Lancer ran the 4G63, which is still an inline-4 turbocharged engine. The main difference between the two engines is that the 4B11 is an aluminum block engine, while the 4G63 is an iron block engine. The 4B11 is still a very capable engine. As previously said, UK Mitsubishi was able to tune it all the way up to 440 horsepower reliably and sell those to the public. The 4G63 was just very capable in terms of durability, where you can make high horsepower numbers and you can do it reliably on the iron block. What is the consensus to most Evo owners is that the 4B11 is safe up to about 400 pound-feet of torque. So you can make 500 horsepower reliably, and you just have to watch the torque number before you start really damaging your engine, or not really damaging, but making it a little bit more unreliable. This isn't your run-of-the-mill Evo 10 GSR. As you can see from the engine bay, it has a few bolt-ons on it, as well as it has a tune done to it. Total output to the wheel is about 330 horsepower. Some mods that you can see from the engine bay are the ETS Intake, as well as the ETS upper intercooler piping. Some things that you can't see are the Tomei Downpipe, as well as the Tomei catback exhaust. It does have an English racing Testpipe as well. Hearing this on the road is pretty cool. It's a little loud for my taste, but the intake sucks in a lot of air. And even though it doesn't have an aftermarket blow-off valve, you can really hear that turbo spool from the intake, which is really nice.
The Lancer Evolution is based on the Lancer sedan. With that said, the differences between the two from the exterior are the wider rear quarter panels and the infamous shoe rack spoiler, which has been a staple for all Evos and rally cars in general. The rear fascia is different to accommodate the dual exhaust and the wider rear quarters. It also includes the wider front fenders and functional side vents, and the front end has larger air inlets for increased cooling and to accommodate for the front intercooler. The hood has both a scoop and vents to help reduce under the hood temperatures and cool down the turbo. It has a very masculine shape, and proud of it. Rather than trying to hide its shape, it flexes it in your face.
The suspension is OEM, except for the addition of H&R Lowering Springs. The lowering springs give the Evo a nice aggressive stance without affecting the ride quality too much. Another modification done by the owner exteriorly was the addition of the Voltex lip, which match up with the OEM side skirts really well. I like how the owner kept this really clean looking, and it really complements the lines on this car. Other modifications to this car that was done were the Audi style headlights, which in my opinion are very nice. Though it does remind me a little bit of the WRX and STI headlights a little. GSR also came with the 12-spoke Inky wheels, while the MR came with the BBS wheels. They both had the Brembo brakes though. If I were to sum up what the interior of an Evo is like, One word could definitely describe it: basic. It is a basic interior. You got a lot of hard plastic material here. You got some trimming here, hard plastic material here, here, everywhere. Though you do got some soft leather material right here, which is really nice. But it's the only place that you do have like a softer material in the interior. Same thing on the passenger side. You got the softer material where the arms go, but the rest of it is all just hard plastic. Your center display is really interesting. You do have a small, what would you say, maybe 4-inch screen? Yeah, 3 or 4-inch screen over here. That's your infotainment system. You got some warning gauge, you got your passenger airbag off, your passenger if they're sitting and they don't have the seatbelt on, and your hazard lights, and then your air conditioning system, which is 3 knobs. It does remind me a little bit of my Miata, where everything is just knobs, just easy to use knobs. Below the HVAC controls, you do have a little pocket for cell phone and other belongings. And then you do have your 12-volt power and lighter right there. Behind that, you got your shift knob. Then behind the shift knob, you do have 3 buttons. 2 of them are blank on this model, and the other button's the AWC, which is all-weather control. Something. Anyways, pressing that button actually changes handling characteristics of your car for different conditions. So right now, if you can see, it says tarmac right there. Changing that, we'll change it to gravel. We'll change it to snow, and then come back to tarmac. Pressing that button changes some of the handling and traction systems, so it can perform better in those conditions. Behind the AWC button is 2 cup holders. And then you got your center console lid. Couple things to note on the steering wheel. You have your basic audio controls, which is right over there. Your cruise control controls. Cruise control. Yeah, that's right. And then your Bluetooth hands-free controls right over here. The steering wheel is wrapped in leather. It feels nice to the touch. It's not super cushy, but it does feel nice to grip. The owner of this vehicle did install the Innovate Motorsports PSB1 gauge. The cool thing about this gauge, it does tell your air to fuel ratio, as well as acts as a boost gauge too. There's probably other functions on this gauge, but I didn't mess around with it too much. To the left of your steering wheel is some more controls. You do have your stability, your DCS, your dynamic stability control settings on or off button. And 2 blank buttons that again could be used on the MR or another trim. Above, for your main instrument cluster, you do have your tachometer on the left, your speedometer on the right, and in the middle is a small little LED screen that gives you other statuses like what your mileage is, your trip meter, door warnings, as well as it does tell you what setting again you are if you're on tarmac, gravel, or snow.
With the car turned on, we can explore the center info screen in the gauge cluster. First, you got your Trip A and Trip B meters. Next is your maintenance intervals. Then you have average miles per tank. After that, you have your average miles per gallon. And as you can see, the Evo doesn't get great MPG. Next is your average speed. And lastly, the S-AWC screen, which shows which wheel torque is being distributed to.
The interior of the Lancer Evolution is pretty roomy. As you can see, I can fit in the back seat just fine, with ample leg room between me and the front seats. You can easily fit 4 people. You could probably fit 5 if you have someone really small that's sitting right in the middle. But it can sit 4 people fine, and I can see this being pretty comfortable going on a road trip. Front passenger seating is good as well. Easy to get in and out. You do sit kind of high. I prefer cars that sit a little lower to the floor, but you get good enough leg room. You do have adequate amount of cup holders. You got one that's on the door, one on your center console. Everything's easy to get to. So it's what you would expect from a compact sedan again.
Interior trunk space is okay at best. You can fit 3 to 4 small luggages in it, which makes it pretty practical. I currently have my camera bag and there are a few small items in there. To help distribute weight, the 12-volt battery as well as the windshield washer fluid have been placed in the trunk area.
And on that note, I would have to give this interior a 3 out of 5. I gotta figure out what my rating system will be. I don't want it to be points, so I'm gonna need your guys' help to let me know what I should rate this. 3 cherries, 3 out of 5 cherries, 3 out of 5 wheels, 3 out of 5 bubble balls. I don't know, it's up to you guys. Please just post in the comments of what you want my scoring to be. Driving the Evo is a joy to drive. Even though the interior is not the greatest interior, it is still a fun car to drive. And the horsepower and the all-wheel drive is definitely what makes this car very fun to drive. Let's go listen to the car for a little bit right here. So as you can tell, again, this is a modded car, so it has a full exhaust system, and the cabin is not quiet at all. But in here, if you're driving this on a long drive for maybe like more than half an hour to an hour, the exhaust sound definitely can beat on you a little bit. The car is lowered on Swift springs, and I don't know the exact spring rate on these springs, but it does make the car stiff. Slightest bump you can definitely feel. The last thing I've noticed about this car is it has a it does have a heavy duty clutch, and the owner did swap out the clutch master cylinder. And I don't know if other Evo 10 owners have the same problem, but I understand the clutch feel being stiffer because of the heavy duty clutch, but the clutch pedal for your clutch to disengage is weird. Disengagement point is high, so you don't have to press on the clutch too hard, but because the clutch feel is very stiff, it makes it very difficult to really smoothly blend the two together. The car, again, on normal smooth roads is fun to drive, and the feedback that you get from the steering wheel and from the chassis is really nice. The interesting thing also is making maneuvers in this car is easy because the steering wheel is very sensitive, to say the least. When I'm driving, it doesn't take much effort. Like, there's no dead zone in the steering. So the moment that you start turning the steering wheel, it can actually be very abrupt. So you have to be careful on how to maneuver it. But it's also when you're making slight maneuvering, like on the highway or on a canyon road, I can imagine the slightest input give you large results. Oh man, it's like a head jerker when that boost kicks in. Braking feels nice on this car. I like the braking. It's the Brembo brakes, so they have one of the best reputations. The average miles per gallon is like 15, 16. It gets between like 14 and 18 or something. And I'm sure the tune didn't really help that as well, so maybe it's even less. Oh my god, there's a GT2 RS, and it's beautiful. with the giant wing, your rear vision isn't that impaired. It's surprising that once I got used to having the rear wing back there, it doesn't impair your vision when you're backing up or like just looking at your rearview mirror. I know some people do get annoyed by having a rear wing or having a giant rear wing, and I thought it would bug me more, but after a day with this car, I got really used to it. For the most part, I really enjoy the car. I really enjoy the way it feels, the horsepower, the power delivery. I do like the car overall. And just a few things that really take some time to get used to. I wouldn't say it irritates me, but it'll take time to get used to, is just the sensitive feel of the steering wheel, where the slightest input on the steering wheel gives you a very dramatic output to the wheels. And driving on the freeway, just going back and forth with the steering wheel, I just didn't like it, to be honest with you. I just didn't like the sensitivity of it. And the clutch pedal. Oh God, the clutch pedal. If other Evo 10 drivers are having this issue, please let me know. Because I'm really interested to know if it's just this person's car or is it just all Evo 10s. What I'm used to is when your clutch is stiffer, you have to be closer to the ground for the disengagement.
It's too loud. I don't like it. Okay, I see you. The car's really nice though. Ooh.
Yeah, she see it's that clutch. She's gonna understand. She's gonna.
Yeah. So what I feel when I was driving the car with Jonathan had me try it was that as I was backing out of the parking space, I felt like it was a pretty smooth transition from starting the car, putting it in, reverse and backing up. It could be my technique and my experience in driving manual vehicles, or it could be because we were parked on a slope and I was just allowing it to drag down.
Oh, that makes sense now.
However, one point I'd like to point out is that upon reversing and setting the car up to gear, I felt as though the clutch was quite difficult to maneuver, thus making me worry that I was not in gear. And after the third try, I figured that it was not me, it was the vehicle.
You're so funny about it, John.
And so I did have to sorry about that. We were just getting on the freeway and I was frightened for my life.